Welcome to episode 4, Mad Mondays with JB, featuring my man, Glenn Marvin. Very excited to have you on the show today, bro. Well, let's get straight into it. I suppose what I've been doing for every one of my episodes is letting my guests give them a Reader's Digest about who they are, where they come from. Very fortunate to have you today because, like me, you're an ex-police officer that's transitioned into commercial enterprise. So I'm really interested to hear about how that occurred, you know, the struggles you went through, and obviously now we've become friends through LinkedIn originally a couple of years ago, and our friendship sort of grown from that to running half marathons together, getting on the piss.
Was that a plural?
One, never again, and spilling a few beers and whiskeys in between. So without further ado, let's get the Reader's Digest about Glenn Marvin.
Well, we'll start at the police because there's a whole other backstory which you don't need to go into, but. So, 7 years New Zealand police, absolutely loved it. Went into it with a passion, thinking I was going to change the world like we all do. Realised that there was a lot more BS and bureaucracy than I really could cope with. And I got sick of picking up dead bodies.
Yep,
so
happens.
Left the police thinking I had no transferable skills. That's all I knew. Went into the corporate world as an account manager for a company and realised very, very quickly that all of those skills that I picked up in the years before travelling, and especially in the police, were completely transferable in regards to communication, responding versus reacting, being able to assess situations, make decisions, talk to people. Should have thought of it.
Yeah.
You go, oh, dude, I dropped out of university twice. I'm moving into a corporate world surrounded by all these people with amazing degrees that know so much more than me. But long story short, 14 months later, I was general manager of the company that I went into as an account manager through a couple of lucky breaks, and it sort of went from there.
Yeah, and I've had a few people when we talk about the backgrounds they go through to where they are now, and they always mention the word luck, and I always like to reiterate, luck's reserved for gambling. Yep. You make your own luck, so you put yourself in the position to have those breaks.
Absolutely.
So I don't buy that for a second that you are lucky. I think that's a result. Your fortune is a result of. Big believer in the quote that says you celebrate in public what you practice in private. So probably all that hard work you're doing for all those years is that's the reward for that.
Look, no matter what I've been doing, and even from a young fella, I was cutting down tea tree steaks on the farm and selling them. I was chopping gorse and I was shooting possums and selling skins. So I've always had an entrepreneurial bent. When I was in the police, I was buying golf equipment out of Canada and selling them on Trade Me because e-commerce wasn't really a thing here.
Yeah.
So it's always been a bent. And moving into that corporate world, I very, very quickly fell in love with the whole digital side of it.
Yep.
Mid-2000s, this whole Google thing. And I was like, holy shit, if you just spend a little bit of money on Google, magically the phone starts ringing. Not so easy now.
No.
But it certainly helped fuel a passion for the digital marketing side of it, a passion for people, passion for marketing, led to a career change from working with private equity, moving into solely focusing in the marketing space, and then managing and leading companies in that area. So it was that sort of marriage of two things that I was really good at, managing people and process, and loving the marketing.
Unreal. Just looking at the screen here, I've got you, mate. That lighting is outstanding for you. It looks like you've spent about 6 hours in a solarium hanging out at the beach, mate. PR. Thank you, everyone, for following at the moment. If you've got any questions for myself or Glenn, Glenn is what I like to refer to as a resident LinkedIn specialist. Certainly 100% responsible for all the lead generation and success I've had through LinkedIn. So if you've got any questions about LinkedIn, you've got any questions about social media, got any questions about the police, obviously we've got an ex-New Zealand copper, ex-Australian copper, both with 7 years, 8 years experience in that relative field. So shoot us any questions. We've got a couple of people tuning in, so it's always good to see. All Kiwis this time too. We've got a good spread, Auckland and the Northland. So unreal. So we touched on it before when you were doing your recap. About some of those transferable skills from the police to commercial enterprise. And what a lot of people don't understand is that in the Queensland Police, where I come from, there's about 15,000 employees. How many are in the New Zealand Police, roughly?
No idea.
No idea. Cool.
Don't care. Bluntly.
True. And of that percentage, not many ever leave. They get stuck in that. They get stuck in that corporate institution, and they go all the way through to retirement. Never truly sort of, there is a percentage that join for that, the moral compass reasons where they want to do right. And, they stick to that for their career, then they retire. Then there's people like ourselves who sort of spend a couple of years there, then realize we are just slaves to politics.
Yep.
All we are is we're a reaction to what politics want. If they want more traffic tickets, we go write more traffic tickets. If they want more this, we go do that. So we're not really, for me, my passion was always catching real criminals, putting criminals behind bars.
100%.
And we were hampered and we weren't always allowed to do that to the best of our ability. And that really got to me.
No, and that's where I think up until the late 80s, early 90s, you could still join the police with this whole idea that it's a vocation, not a job.
Right.
It was something that you're passionate about, you wanted to give to the community, you were actually impacting and changing lives. And you still have the opportunity to do that, but in that 90s and early 2000s, there's this massive ad campaign, there's this massive drive on recruitment when you have numbers. And as much as I love the campaign, better work stories, we've been attracting people that are after a cool job rather than I'm really, really passionate about making a difference and helping people and catching the baddies.
And they're sort of like fast cars.
Yeah.
Driving fast cars, which you're not even allowed to do anymore because of the pursuit policy. But and I want to make it very clear, this podcast is we're much like I mentioned on the show previously, Bloke in a Bar, Kempy, is all about positive news stories. So we're not here to shit can the police. We're huge advocates of the police, and they have fundamentally one of the most important jobs in the world. So we're very much on the police side, but we're bringing to the floor the reality of being in the police, and that is a reality. So certainly
probably one of the biggest positive impacts on my life and my
100%.
Corporate career has been the grounding that I had in the police.
We're not sitting here without the police.
No.
100%. So on that, what I wanted to do was share a little bit of insights from yourself and myself on what our top 5 transferable skills were from the police. So I'll let you go first and I'll follow, because we'll probably overlap in some degree with some of them.
Totally. Right. I've even written some of these things down because I did actually think about it before this.
Good.
Anyway.
Think before you speak is always a good MO.
There is a term that's used, whether it's in police, whether it's in fire, whether it's in ambulance, and you hear it much more in the States around where first responders.
Yep.
And I think there's a very, very important delineation between responding and reacting, and it's something I'm quite bullish about at the moment, and I'm talking about this a lot. So we're not the first reactors, because what happens when you react? It's just that gut thing. Something happens and you do an instant reaction.
Fight or flight.
And it's like, this is what I'm going to do. And so if you're in the situation and you react, more often than not, you're actually probably going to make a dangerous decision, a wrong decision, or you're going to put other people at risk.
Yep.
Whereas when you are a first responder or you respond to a situation, you observe, assess, and then you make a calculated decision around the action that you're then going to take. Right. That is, I think, probably the biggest takeaway skill that I took from the years that I was in the police force, is moving from that reactive attitude to life to responding.
Yep.
And it's something
sorry to
that,
interrupt, but to put that in police terms from all the people over in Australia, that's sort of conducting continual risk assessments.
Yep.
Instead of making a reaction, it's assessing the risk and then making a judgment call based on that assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a member of the general public come in and they're just, this is when emotion takes over rather than calculation. And it's where, as police officers, there are plenty of times where we have to make a decision around action that we take that we may not necessarily agree with,
Yep.
but it is the best decision in the moment based on the laws, the regulations, and the things that we're bound to uphold.
Yep. And it's one of those things where, in hindsight's a beautiful thing, and sometimes you might make the wrong call, but at the moment in time, it was the right call based on your judgment.
Yep.
And as long as you own that call, and you can say, these are the reasons why I did it, and you can articulate that risk assessment, you'll be fine.
And then you flip that around into the corporate world.
Yep.
And I think that is where, we've both, I think, had fantastic relationships with both clients and the people that we employ, is we celebrate the fact that if they make a decision based on the situation that they are in, and they can actually voice and take us through the decision-making process, even if it turns to custard, we understand that they were doing maybe it was the wrong thing for the right reason, and we can learn from it and we can go back. But if you're just reacting to a situation, then you're not necessarily going to make good decisions for yourself or for your clients.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm writing notes because when I speak to you, I always remember those things that when I first started that you taught me, and I'm just remembering, little things. I can talk about it now. I mean, this is a free-for-all podcast,
Totally, man.
live show, so I don't care. 2 pillars of my business that are fundamentally crucial to the success I have today is authenticity and relationships.
Yep.
And I just spoke at the Young Enterprise scheme done by the Auckland Chamber of Business. Yep. And I spoke to all those high school kids, and I said, if you want to be a CEO and you want to be successful, for me, the most important thing I found is in a world where we're so focused on technology and we're so focused on lead generation and Google AdWords and all that sort of stuff, the old school value of being authentic and the old school value of treasuring relationships, both with clients, both with customers, is fundamentally important, because it's what separates you from such a competitive field at the moment, because we're in a time in life where it has never been so easy to make money. So on the flip side, there are so many people that are going to take the risk of running their own show. So you've got such a competitive field, and what separates you from the rest is the ability to hold those authentic relationships. And you taught me that. So hey, thank you.
Oh, and I'm just going to take that pen and I'm going to make a note about this to talk about a little bit later on. And this is around personal purpose.
Yep.
Versus your business goals.
Correct.
Because your business goal is sort of like a finite thing, right?
Yep.
And that'll happen at one point in time. You will achieve that. Well, what's next? And what about those 10 years that it might take to get you there? So what is that personal purpose that keeps you going? Next thing is, what is it? Empathy. Because and it first hit me in the police when you get so much stick. And there are so many people making assumptions around how you are treating them and the reason that you're treating them that way, and they have absolutely zero respect and they treat you like absolute dirt. And I spent about 2 years working with youth while I was in the police.
Yep.
And one of the conversations that I would have with them regularly is in and around how to actually treat police officers to make sure that you were treated respectfully.
Yep.
If you're going to mouth off and lip off and call us all names under the sun, don't expect to be treated with that same level of respect that other people are getting. And to back that up, I could be going from picking up a dead kid from the side of the road to somebody that died in a house fire to somebody that's just had their house burgled, and then have to deal with you lipping off when you've got absolutely every opportunity to be a good kid or a good person, and you don't understand all of the pent-up emotion that builds up to that one moment. So I completely understand how people crack in those situations.
And that rundown that you just gave then, going from, fatality to potentially a homicide to a suicide to then just some little juvenile having amount. It sounds really, really out of this world, but that's quite it's a common occurrence for
every
police.
day.
So when we talk about them having the most important job in the world, that's the reason why, because some police officer somewhere will be doing today what you just described.
Totally.
So it's a lot to take in.
And as my career progressed, I matured a little in my thinking, and then I started flipping that mentality in and around the people that I was dealing with. So, child poverty, people living below the breadline, everything like that. So it's easy to look at people that are getting into trouble and getting into shit and go, well, look, you're just a shit kicker that's never been any good. You're never going to amount to anything like that. But then you look at their performance in school, and people go, oh, look, he's just a loser. Reckon, his family's always been losers. They'll always be losers. And you think, how can you expect that kid to do as well as another kid from a stable family that's got food on the table every single day,
Yep.
that doesn't have an auntie that's encouraging to come out and do bergs and stuff like that? They can't even think properly if they don't have the right nutrition.
Yeah.
So, they are starting
They're
from
they're
way
they're-
behind the eight ball.
They're born into a disadvantage, and they're born into essentially what's going to be a life of crime.
Yep. And we all keep on going on about this whole thing of everybody has a choice. You can just choose to be different.
Sometimes the choice is easier for others.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very much
100%
so.
agree. So we're on the same page with that. So we've got what was it? It was responding versus reacting.
Yep.
Your second one's being empathy, which I think is straightforward. The more empathetic you are in the world, and as long as you've got empathy duly balanced with results and determination, you're going to be a very, very successful person, regardless of what your motive is to do what you want to do. If you can be grateful as well as determined, and then understand that you need to be rational and achieve results, you're going to be ahead of everyone else. So
Yep.
we've got those two. What's your third one?
Third one, communication. No,
No brainer.
Duh.
Dead set. Yeah, that's my one.
Being
Tick.
able to communicate a message succinctly, briefly, to get them to take the right action that you want them to take. Ask, tell, make is a good old analogy in there. You got to ask someone to do something. As an employer, ask, tell. The make is a little bit harder, but it's making them realise the consequence if they don't actually take the actions. And that sort of flows into number 4 of mine, which is the psychology of human nature.
Yeah. Big for me, because obviously my company, we do fraud investigations daily. So, the whole communicating for me is both a personal thing as well as I need to execute that daily to make $1.
Totally.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to hone on that for ages. So.
You hone away on it because...
Oh, well, I look at it when we talk about communicating, and most people will think about just talking, right? The most important communicating is your nonverbal cues, which is, police 101, really. So for me, when we're doing fraud investigations, I don't necessarily care what people say. I'm more worried about, their behaviour behind the mouth, So talk about the psychology for you in a commercial sense, and then we'll keep tuning on, because two lads just having a yarn, and we're already smashing through our time slot.
Levers, right?
Yep.
When you understand the drivers that make people take certain actions, it means that you have a much better ability to pull on those levers to drive them in the direction you want them to go.
Yep.
And that can be a force for good and a force for evil.
Correct.
And the last thing is gratitude, which I think is something that you're really big on as well.
Man, using all my bloody transferable skills.
You go.
Which,
You
it's a
take
good
it.
thing. It's a good thing, though, because obviously that means there's consistency in both New Zealand police, Australian police, in what we're doing. Because, my 5, gratitude, resilience, not being a poor manager. I don't know if that relates to New Zealand. I'll touch on that, and then and I like to say not employing police. So I've got 7 staff, and only one of them's an ex-copper. So I've strategically not employed ex-police, and I have a very good reason for that. So gratitude for me is I spent a lot of time, well, not a lot compared to some, but some time out in an Aboriginal community. And I saw a community of people that really, really were behind the 8 ball. And I say behind the 8 ball with no disrespect, but they didn't have, flash houses that everyone else had. They didn't have the access to employment, whatever. They didn't have recreational activities. They didn't have hobbies. They didn't have, there was 900 people stuck in a community just away from everyone else. It was a mission that was set up by the government way back when, and I saw people that really, really did it tough. And working out in that community, which was one of the most, penny drop moments for me, was the ability to, when I left there and I've gone on to become a detective, and where I am now is no matter how tough it gets for me in business, is to have grace and gratitude to go, you know what? Yeah, I might be doing it tough and these bills are hard. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food. I've got a family that loves me. I've got access to whatever I want to do. The world is my oyster. And until people can actually find that in themselves, you know, it's hard. You know, they're going to struggle. So gratitude's huge for me. Resilience, obviously, we've already touched on the things when we're talking about going job to job to job, just you're exposed to so much shit. So, you know, being self-aware and having resilience. So knowing, like, for me, I'm a huge advocate, as you are, on mental health. You know, like, I have no shame in if I'm having a tough time calling Glenn and going, Glenn, mate, shit's tough, you know, and you know, talk me through that, JB, you know, and there's that open platform. And that you know, that helps with your resilience because you know, shit, I can get through this. You know, I can call a mate and I can have a chat with a mate. That never used to be the case a couple of decades ago. That was always, you know, when you probably first joined the police, that wasn't around, you know, that stigma around it. So I got that. Not being a poor manager, man, I had some shit managers when I was in the police. Had some really, really amazing ones who I've emulated, but I had some really, really poor ones that, you know, in the police, you've got to do what we called MDP, which is a manager's development program. And literally you've got these criteria you learn about, and you literally go to your boss and you go, how the fuck did you get promoted?
Yeah.
It's like you're not even ticking a single box, you know? And so like I've really taken on all of the good stuff I learned from my good managers, and I apply that, and I conversely refuse to do anything my poor managers used to do, you know, because and they were really, they were bosses, they didn't lead, you know, that whole cliche. And I'm really, really trying. I think if any one of my staff were watching or they commented on this, they would agree that, you know, I lead from the front, and no matter how hard they think they work, they know that what I'm doing behind the scenes is 10 times what they're doing, you know. So
Oh, absolutely. And I think the challenge that we had probably in the era that we were coming through is there was still this thing around tenure versus attitude and aptitude.
Yeah.
So those with the longer serving members would get promotion based on tenure,
not necessarily
length
skill.
of service.
Yeah.
And yes, absolute level of knowledge, but there is no different in the corporate world. You know, some of the biggest mistakes we can make is to promote our best salesperson into a manager.
Service. Yeah.
Because they don't necessarily have the skills to do the job that they're getting hired to do.
And oh, mate, I suffer. Like, if anyone just didn't have a thick skin, you wouldn't work in the insurance industry, man. The amount of corporate bullying I am subject to based on my age is ridiculous. Yeah. Like, I'm 30 years of age, and I literally have some of the biggest insurance companies go, we don't want to use John because he's not old enough. What would he know? He's only 30. It's like, are you kidding? I got voted World Insurance Investigator of the Year in 2018. Think I know what I'm doing. But still, age-based discrimination. Couldn't give a shit about what my resume says. It's just, you're 30, what the hell do you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if they're doing that to me, how many good, amazing staff do they have within their internal structure that they're overlooking based on age? It's just stupid. But hey,
great opportunity for employment for.
Mate, yeah, don't worry, I'm cashing in. Don't you worry. If others don't see it, I do it. And thankfully, in the insurance industry, we've got a thing called the Young Insurance Professionals, the YIPs, and that's a really good way to highlight some of the amazing work a lot of young insurance professionals are doing. And there are some superstars. And man, I speak with them and they talk about that sort of shit. And it's just like, how in 2020 do we still have that archaic mindset around trying to just put down young people, and whether or not it's an insecurity, whether or not it's there, it's sort of getting to the end of their career and they look back and they didn't really achieve that much and they want to try and sort of handbrake young kids that are trying to have a real crack. Who knows? But it's just shit house, quite frankly. So, and the last one, so not employing police. Now, I say this with the most respect I can to police officers. But a lot of police leave the police for the wrong reasons. I think yourself and myself are probably true exceptions to that, in the sense that we left with only 7 years service, so we were still hungry for more. We didn't leave after 30 years and just were looking for an easy dollar like you have in the police, because you're in the police, you're paid per hour, regardless of how much or how little work you do. So when I was in the police, you know, I had this ambition of becoming, you know, one of the youngest detectives in Australia, which I achieved. And I could only achieve that through hard work. And I know there'll be people on this that think, oh, JB didn't work hard. I was good at disguising how much work I did. And I like to say anyway. And, you know, I used to get so frustrated when I used to see other police officers that were earning more money than me and they did fuck all. And I'm like, oh. And I made a big thing about when I left the police, only employing certain police because they, they're working for the right reasons, and they're hungry, and not all, everyone wants to eat, but few are willing to hunt. It's a really popular saying, and that's so true about business. And yeah, anything you want to add to that?
I think it's fair to say that we both left the police because of who we wanted to be, and we saw the risk of who we would become if we stayed.
Yep. Yeah, and I was a big believer of, I was always known in the police of being super confident. Probably that probably hasn't changed, but with being confident, you have to own that if you think you are the best, go execute, and that's what I did. Was I entered an industry where it was oversaturated for the work that's around, and I said, what's your point of difference going to be? Is that I'm willing to work harder than every single other person in the industry. Mm-hmm. I'll work for free. I don't care. I put my money where my mouth is, and thankfully, it's
things have paid off.
Sort of. I've got a long way to go, but I heard an I don't know how much truth behind it, but someone in my industry turned over $18 million in a year, shitload of money for a PI. Mm-hmm. So my goals got a severe adjustment after. I don't even care if it's not true. It gave me good motivation. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to try and earn $20 million in a year. So got a few things on the plan. What I wanted to talk about with you too, we've got 20 minutes, so we're sweet on time. We're doing well. I want to touch on, you're a big runner. I learnt this last year when I ran.
Now, is that a big runner or a big runner?
Both. No. You love running marathons and all that real painful crap. Yep. You and Dom Harvey, the two people in New Zealand who I respect in terms of your running, and Stu Harley. I'll throw you out there, Stu, because you ran the Marathon half marathon with me as well. Man, you run that in a bloody suit. Like, I ran that in full-on running gear, like I was some sort of like proper and I struggled. Like, I sucked. It was the worst thing ever. And you ran that in a goddamn suit. Tell me about it. Tell me about mental health, and running's obviously a huge thing for you with your mental health. Talk me through that journey.
I've run a few marathons in the tux, and it's sort of selective. Look, when it comes down to it, that race, last year.
Yeah, not far from. It was almost 12 months ago.
It was.
Yeah.
It was literally a matter of days after the mosque shooting.
Yep.
And everyone was just deflated. And I'd vowed 2 years ago never to bring the tux back out. But it was a spur of the moment thing on the morning. I was like, bugger it, right? Yeah. I'm just gonna go for a good time, not a fast time. Grabbed the tux out and had a little trot.
There's no such thing as a good time when running a half marathon. That is factual evidence.
It's just because you haven't run enough.
It's factual evidence from John Borland.
Subjective.
Very much subjective. Running sucks. How many half marathons have you run?
No idea.
How many marathons have you run?
Don't count.
How many ultras?
20 odd.
I've done one half. I did around the bays as well. So my lead up training for the half marathon was round the bays. That was it.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Dom Harvey before it, because I did round the bays with Dom, and I was like, so what's like, you've done a lot of running. What's your one word of advice? And he goes, mate, whatever you run, you can double that easy if you're in the moment.
Yep.
So he said, if you can run 10Ks, you can run half a marathon. That was really, really stupid of Dom to say that to me, because I took that literally.
And you did it.
I did do it, but I was hurting, man. I got home and I was
that's
like,
the idea.
No, you're meant to enjoy it. And it was like, I was gassed, man, the whole way. And like, there's nothing more humbling than when you're running at the age of 29, you're still playing rugby. I went on to make counties that year for rugby, and you're running like a half marathon, and there's just these old ass people just gassing you, and you're just like, gives your ego a good check, eh? It's brilliant.
So it's actually probably a good lead into how I started running marathons, because I left the police, and I was 105 kilos. So everyone thinks, in the police you're going to stay fit.
So you're in the comm centre, mate, dealing jobs?
No. I moved back to Auckland, went for a run with my brother, couldn't even get to the end of the second street before I had to start walking. I was like, holy shit. I entered the Auckland half marathon, and you come into Victoria Park at the finish, and you come down one of the streets down North Wharf, and I was cruising down, and there was this rather large lady and this old guy who must have been in his 80s that for the last 5Ks we'd been going backwards and forwards and muscling for position, and I was like, there is nothing is going to let these two
just
finish in front of me.
Creasing your ego.
And it was painful. It was absolutely painful. And as we started getting closer and closer to Vicky Park, there's this transition where the full marathon runners peel off left and you carry on straight.
Gotcha.
And they both peeled off left. And I was left devastated thinking, I'm dying here doing a half, and they've just peeled off. And
It's sort of a double-edged sword, though, because I had that exact same feeling when I swear this lady was nearly in triple figures. She was that old, and she just gassed me, and my creased my ego. But at the same time, it quickly switched to how proud I was of her. And I was like, how amazing is that? No, I did. I was like, how awesome is that for her? Because she's running past. She must just like grow 6 inches when she just steams past a young fella and be like, yeah, check your ego, young man, I got you. And I'm like, that is same as squash. Squash is another one of those sports where as a young bloke, your ego gets creased real quick and on the reg. And I love playing both of those because it puts me back in check, and I need that from time to time.
So I've used it. For me, running has, well, since I left the police, running has been a massive part for me in regards to mental health.
Yep.
General fitness. When I'm not running, I'll generally put on weight. I've never been a gym junkie until probably the last few months.
Yeah.
And so that really put me on this great sort of transition from being a lard ass to somebody actually looking after myself. So I went from there. The next year I entered the marathon, and the year after that I did another couple of marathons, and I did my first ultra. I did the Kepler down in the South Island, 60
I'm
k's.
just thinking about it.
And then I got really excited and went over to Nepal and did a marathon up at Everest Base Camp. So
Was that just recently?
No.
No, you did one with your family just recently over in it wasn't South Africa, Egypt or somewhere like that? I'm sure I saw it. You did a run with your daughters and stuff?
Yeah, there was just like a 10K in Rome when we were over in Italy for a few weeks.
That would feel like a marathon for me.
Yeah, no, it was cool. But doing that, I found, like, the last few months I've been getting into meditation. And I suck, right? I absolutely suck at that because my brain goes a million miles an hour, and I'm trying to just still it a little bit.
Need some magnesium, bro.
But it's, for me, running is like an active meditation.
Yep, 100%.
It takes a little bit of time, and your brain's working through a whole bunch of stuff. Then it runs out of stuff to think about, and you're just focusing on nothing, and you just get that feet on the pavement. And it's when you've cleared your mind that I've made some of my best business decisions, some of the best insights in regards to what we're doing, some great ideas around marketing and just issue resolution. When you clear your mind, you get so much clarity on all the other things that are really the problem.
Yeah, and I get that for different reasons, because when I run, literally I'm in that much pain that I stop thinking about all the peripherals, because all I can think about is my stitch or how much my knee's aching, and they're not even injuries. Like, my mind just makes them up just to try and stop me from stopping, which ties in to my next thing is the similarities. So I put rugby on this because I play rugby. I don't really like running, but the similarities between both of those and business, and mine's the ability to endure. All right. So, and that's a huge thing, is being able to push through the barriers and just get through those hard moments, which happen in business a lot. And it's no different to running. Say you got a 21 kilometer half marathon and you get to the 3rd or 4th kilometer and your mind starts playing tricks on you. Happens to me the one time I run, it happened to me. I literally, when we come around that corner, pretty much by the time we come around that first corner at Maraetai, up over that bridge, I was smoked, and we was like 2Ks into it, and I just I finished it. I got 21 Ks, so it can be done.
You did it.
Yeah. So, and I did it in 2 hours and 20 minutes or 15 minutes or something, I was stoked with that.
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
time doesn't matter when you're doing these things.
Oh, it does for me, because I'm a competitive human. Again, got smoked.
What was the next one?
Oh, I got smoked by like 70% of the people that did it. But anyhow, so mine are the endurance, is the ability to endure through those tough times to get to the end. And that's no different to business. No. So is that the same for you, or what?
Oh, yes. I'm like, anyone wants a keynote on why every business owner should do a ultra marathon, I'm your man.
There we go.
There's a challenge for you. So I've got.
I'll do an ultra if you bloody.
Dude.
Oh, I forgot this was live.
Taupo Ultra 50K, 11th of October. He's just signed up.
2020, 2021.
Done.
So, I can't do an ultra, bro. I barely did 21 Ks.
You heard it here.
Yeah,
right.
True. Call
so,
out. I'll do it. Sweet.
Sam Shoshana, who is the CEO of Paper Plus, he's 30 kilos bigger than you. He's got calf issues at the moment. Sent me through screenshot. He's entered it, and we're going to do it together. and we can organise a team. Anyone else want to do their first ultra? I will support you and we'll do it together as a team.
I'll get us a beer sponsor. Get us a beer sponsor.
So the big thing is, running an ultra is so much like being in business. So before you go into business by yourself and you go out and you have this big leap, you've got all of these hopes, these dreams, these aspirations, and you lay down all of these plans, and you might build your website and you start training yourself so that you're going to get into all this thing, and then you get to the start line and you're packing yourself. You think, I've never freaking run this far. I've never done this before. You start doubting yourself. It's like that first day you freaking open the shop door, the website goes live, all of those insecurities start coming out. You are absolutely fizzing, but you're also shitting bricks. And then the start gun goes off and you're just out the gate, flooring it, first 2Ks.
Yeah, that's me. I was guilty of that.
And you are on fire.
I was a 4-minute pace. It was brilliant.
First couple of Ks is like, yeah, this is freaking amazing. This is awesome. And everyone around you that's got any experience goes, this guy's just going to blow up.
I'm sure you jogged past me, not even sweating by about the 3K mark, and I was just hurting. And you're like, you went too fast, man. You went too fast. I know. But that's brilliant.
So that's the sort of thing that happens. And we make heaps of mistakes when we first start off. But it's that excitement, that passion, that everything just gets us through that first wee while. And then it's around, the preparation that we've done beforehand helps us get through. It's in ultras, it's nutrition and making sure that we're hydrated and things like that, and going at a pace that is right for us. So for some businesses and some people, they can actually go at a faster pace, but don't get caught up with looking at those that are around you and the pace that they're going at, because you got to run your own race.
Yeah, exactly. You got to stop keeping up with the Joneses, just run your own. That's brilliant.
And then you get to a point where it's like, I've gone as far as I can go. I've never run this far before in my life, and about 2 minutes later,
you've executed.
Your body just goes, oh shit. Right, because your mind is sending you all these signals. So you're getting into situations that you've never been in before, and you don't know how to react. And you go through these massive highs and these massive lows. And the further into the ultra you get, the bigger the highs and the bigger the lows, and the closer they are together, because you're going through this whole energy depletion, throwing and everything like that. And in business, it's just the same, because every single day, business is not easy, people. Every single day we're coming up against new challenges.
Sorry to interrupt. Amos Banbury, shout out, bro. From Christchurch, he's just gone, let's do the ultra, Johnny Borland.
Yeah,
so we've got one.
We've got
Amos,
a team.
Amos, the one of the fellas from runs a big finance company down in Christchurch, and he owns a bar, Robbie's Bar. If you're from Christchurch, head to Robbie's and make sure you get a skewy. But we've got another member.
Damn right.
Yeah, we're in. Sorry to interrupt, but that was important.
But then you cross the finish line, and at the end of it, and you're just absolutely spent, but completely elated. And it's like, I've set that goal in business, and I've done it, and now I've accomplished it, and I'm absolutely elated. I've made it, and you're in so much pain and so much suffering, and you've looked back at everything that you've done, and then 2 days later, you're like, right, what's next?
2 days. You're really selling it. I'm stoked about that. Hey, man, we're doing good for time. That's what happens when you get a couple of lads and you just let them talk shit, eh?
Yeah,
we're going to scrap that because that was a 10-minute session. We're just going to have a little bit of, because this is Mad Mondays, we do like to do a bit of recap of sports on the weekend. The negative press about Izzy versus Romero, labelled the worst title fight ever. For me, the tactics. Izzy knew that he had the belt. If Romero wanted it, he had to go after him. If Romero didn't want to do that, mate, props to Izzy for just a strategy and executing that strategy.
Absolutely,
so
100%.
all the haters, you're idiots.
I'm a massive fan. I'd rather have a boring win than a showy loss.
Oh, there you go. That could be New Zealand Herald's headline next week. Toronto Wolfpack, 6 losses in a row. Sonny Bill Williams copping a hiding in the media. We touched on this before the session went live. They quite possibly could be 1 year in the Super League because they've come through this year and the bottom team gets relegated. So I hope it's not.
Very interested to see if he's got an out clause. If they get relegated.
Who knows? But look, let's hope it's not the case. And we did touch on they've played a lot of really, really good teams early on.
The last 6 games we've got Leeds, Wigan,
Hull.
Warrington.
I'm sure they played Hull FC and a few others. So look, to all the Toronto Wolfpack crew, I know Blakey Wallace usually watches this, so you still got our support from over here at Aotearoa. So just rip in and hopefully you can string a couple wins together because we want to see you in the Super League, not back in Tier 2.
But a negative 150 points differential in the last 6 games is not probably the greatest.
Yeah, I think they've had 240 or 250 scored against, and they've scored maybe 70 or 80 points, so not great. But hang on, we'll stay positive. We're a positive podcast. And some positive stuff. I got 2. My Mighty Reds almost beat the Crusaders on the weekend.
I love how you make a positive out of that.
It was close. Mate, the Reds haven't won over here since like 2012 or something. It might be 2013. Unfortunately, it was against the Chiefs, which is my team I support over here in the Super 15s. And the Auckland Blues dusted the Canes. I don't even like the Blues, but that's a good score. That's a good result.
I'm a Counties man through and through.
Yeah,
and,
my man.
And Counties, Chiefs. But I'm pretty stoked to see the Blues come up.
Yeah, it's always good because the thing about the Blues is they cop so much flack from everyone else, and no matter if you don't like him, you've got to respect the team that just gets a hiding from the armchair critics.
So how much do you think comes down to coaching culture?
A lot. Like they're competing for 80 minutes. And that's the difference from last year is they competed for 60 or they competed for 50. And any of people that know more rugby than me, feel free to comment. But I feel like it's an attitude thing and it's an attitude shift, whether or not, I don't think the recruitment of Barry didn't even play on the weekend, so there's no difference there. But it's the ability to compete, and they're competing. So
yeah, I mean, Auckland's always been slammed for having a team of individuals.
Yep.
Right.
Doesn't look like the case this year, so it's great, and that's great for the competition, and even more so for the Reds because like that they're exactly the same. Brad Thorne's in charge, Big Brad. Funny story about Brad. I had a mate that went to shout out Stewie Hayes, went to university with him over in Brisbane, and Brad Thorne was that big that he had to sit in the stairwell of the university lecture rooms because he couldn't fit in the chairs in the desk. So he's a monster of a human. But he's doing good things with the Reds because quite frankly they missed the mark in the last couple of years, and to compete over here in New Zealand against the Crusaders is huge, and they lost by probably was close to 2 tries because the Crusaders scored on extra time. But
and you flip that around and you look at the abysmal performance of the Waratahs.
Mate. Oh, and I forgot to mention if the Reds could get a kicker, they would have beaten the Crusaders. Just saying.
Ready for another call up?
No. If I could learn the rules, perhaps. We've got a couple minutes left. What I wanted to do was just give your platform, personally, as a thank you, about what you're doing with Connector and LinkedIn. Because, as I said, my business is where it is today because of my ability to use LinkedIn as a platform to build relationships. Not only relationships, authentic relationships, not clickbaity, not, I was guilty at the start before I did your course of being really, really spammy on LinkedIn before I learned the intricacies and I learned about how you can actually use it effectively. So here's your platform. For anyone that doesn't know, most people that I'm friends with anyway know about Connector here in New Zealand, but here's your opportunity just to sort of tell them about Connector, what you're doing, and go from there.
I'll take the opportunity not to sell anything.
But that's the classic Glenn. It's Connector.
What I'll do is I'll just say this is anybody that has got a business, anybody that is in sales, that has the luxury to play the long game, LinkedIn is the platform that you should be on. And LinkedIn is not a sales platform; it's a relationship building platform. And I'll give you my 30-second right on that. Is
you've got 45?
I've got 45 seconds. Right now, I've got 40. So I don't give a shit what platform you use because LinkedIn will have its sunset and something else will take its place. But the real key to success is people still buy it from people. Yep. It doesn't matter how much technology is involved. So anything that you can do to take online connections and transfer that to a real world relationship is going to give you the strongest leads. It's going to give you inbound leads, and it's going to give you authentic relationships that become long-term customers that value you. So, you're probably hearing this slammed down your throat from so many different quarters, but a really good way of thinking about it is return in advance, not return on investment. Right. So I'm giving value freely. I'm building trust. I'm building likability, and I'm adding value to other people's worlds. So when they are ready to actually make a buying decision, you're the first person that they call. And my inbox on this thing just goes nuts. We very rarely advertise. It comes from giving value first, and I completely understand. Right, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of salespeople out there right now.
Everyone's an expert.
Going, well, I don't have time to play the long game. Right, I've got commission to make. I've got targets to hit every month, but right, 99% of you are not using the platform effectively to start with. So look at this as an investment in your long-term pipeline. Start adding value to other people's relationships. Start actually intentionally engaging with other people's content. Start thinking about the quality of content that you're producing that's either going to add value to somebody else, even to add a bit of controversy. You want to spark a conversation. Be yourself.
Authenticity plus relationships equals success.
Equals money. And there's nothing wrong with money.
There we go, people. And that's the wrap. So thank you, Glenn Marvin, for your time today. Absolutely amazing to talk to another ex-police officer in commercial enterprise. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of Mad Mondays with JB. Peace.
Out.